Welcome again. As you just heard, we did have a lot of requests to record this session, people who said they could not make it today. So I just want to let everyone know that we are recording. It will be posted on the Language Success Team's site, the BCIT Language Success Team's site. And that's to accommodate people, especially who couldn't make it today, who really wanted to access this information. If you don't want to appear on camera, you can turn your camera off, of course, if that makes you more comfortable. And welcome to Diversity Circles and the presentation on accessible online learning environments, how accessible content can be beneficial for all learners, including EAL students. I want to start off by passing over to our colleague Zal Joseph to acknowledge the territories. You can go to the next slide, Kyla. Thanks.
Thanks, Shannon. It's nice to see everyone. Really look forward to today's session. And we always like to start first and foremost by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And in looking at accessible online environments and English as an additional language, it reminds me of an elder within the Tsleil-Waututh Nation who came and sat in a circle with some international students. And she shared on her residential school experience. And within that share, her name was Taha from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. And I believe in the Halkamenan language, that's mother or something along those lines. Don't quote me on that. But she shared in that circle just her admiration for other cultures that had fluent speakers in their territory and being able to learn the language in an open and not easy, but a shared relationship with family. So I just thought I'd share that, just hopefully that relates in some way to the topic today, Christina. But thinking of that Tsleil-Waututh elder amongst community, for many different communities, sharing about language and the importance of a community of practice, but also a community of openness and caring. So she was a residential school survivor, so she did have that challenge, of course, with historical context of language being passed down from her family to her. But yeah, I really appreciate the guest here today, Christina, and just the continued acknowledgement and work we do with the Coast Salish nations here with Diversity Circles. Thank you, Masi Joe.
Thanks so much for those words, very much appreciated. On the next slide, we just have a few what we call ground rules for today, just asking everyone to share the time we have together, enjoy the dialogue in a respectful way. We're all here to learn and be curious. If people share personal stories, we ask you to share the learnings, but not who said them. The chat will be open, so we'll try to be attentive to the presenter and put our questions in the chat when we have a chance. And I know that everyone saw on the registration page and on the invitation that we do have a code of conduct now. Hopefully you had a chance to glance at it. That's just a way of further advancing all of our ability to have respectful and accountable conversations together in these spaces. So thank you for taking the time to read that. On the next slide, we have some resources. If you need support from any of these resources, or if your students or colleagues need support, of course, there's the Respect, Diversity, Inclusion Office, there's Early Assist for students, there's Counseling and Student Support for students, and Human Resources, and SSEM for employees and others, including students. So yeah, just a quick reminder of those things. Sometimes these topics will remind people that there may be those in the community who need help. And finally, on the last slide, the last slide of my introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Christina You had a chance to read her bio earlier, probably. We're really happy to have Christina here with us today to present on this topic. And I will leave it to her to say any other introductory words. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Wendy and Za. Those words were really powerful. So it was just such a great way to start this off. And I will start by sharing my screen. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining me here today. I know it's a busy time, everybody's swamped with midterms, so I appreciate the time that you're taking to be here. I'm very excited to be here to discuss with you a topic that I'm quite passionate about, and that is how accessible content can be beneficial for all learners, but particularly our English as a second language or EAL students. When we think about accessibility, they are not the first group that we traditionally consider. But over the years, I've come to understand that the kinds of accommodations we make for accessibility really benefits our EAL learners as well. And this presentation is part of a larger project that is being funded through the Government of Canada under the Future Skills Program. And the strategic goals of that program include strengthening skills development so that all Canadians can look to a future of meaningful and relevant lifelong learning opportunities. And so underlying what I'm talking about today is that focus on supporting our EAL students as they gain the skills necessary to have successful careers through BCIT and their studies here. Coming to what's on the agenda today, we'll be talking a little bit about our EAL learners, talk a bit about accessible content, the barriers that can arise if content is inaccessible. Then finally, I'll guide you through some examples of content I've designed with accessibility in mind, and we'll end with time for questions. So I'm gonna begin with a little bit of background about our team. The Language Success Team is a new initiative at BCIT to support our EAL learners. And we are doing this through multiple avenues using post-admission language assessment to inform our synchronous language support courses and our asynchronous self-access materials. And I'll show you some of those today. We also have some industry partnerships in order to offer job interview coaching and mock interviews for prospective job seekers. And all of this is to attain our three main goals of the team, which is to increase communication skill, academic success, and of course, job preparedness. And if you're interested in finding out more about the team, then you can visit our webpage, www.bcit.ca/language support. I'm the instructional designer on the project, so I work a lot with the LMS. And for those outside of BCIT, our LMS that we use is D2L Brightspace or Learning Hub in order to support our students. And I've been an instructional designer for a few years now. And this is how I got interested in learning more about creating accessible content for all. I will also preface this by saying, however, that I'm not an expert in accessibility design, but I have gained a lot of knowledge through help and advice from other instructional designers over the years. And I want to use that to support our EAL students. So let's zoom in for a moment to think about who we mean when we consider EAL learners. A lot of people consider that EAL equates with international students, but really that's just only one part of our demographic. In fact, EAL includes our immigrant refugees, newcomers to Canada, many of whom went to and graduated from Canadian high schools. So when we consider this, we have to consider that we're dealing with a huge range of people. We are dealing with people with different cultural backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, language abilities, strategic competencies, and things that they can do well and things that they also struggle with. And this is where accessibility comes in. Considering what accessibility is, the definition I took was from Accessibility Services Canada, the design of products, devices, services, or environments for people who experience disabilities. And when we think about accessible content, we need to think back to the birthplace of accessibility, where that term came from. It actually came from the architecture design concept that a building can be designed to be accessible to everyone, regardless of their ability. So designers often point to the example of the curb cut. And that was a brilliant idea that makes no difference to us who do not use wheelchairs, but which improve the lives of millions of wheelchair users throughout the world. It was a really fast, easy, and quick solution. And that is where the idea of universal design for learning comes from, that we can design learning to accommodate everyone, no matter what the skill is. And in fact, we can even improve education for everyone because accessible content benefits all students. And I'll show some examples of that today. And a simple example is of that is also ensuring, for example, closed captions on videos. Everyone likes to be able to watch a video, but some people prefer to read at the same time. So depending on kind of what our preferences are as well. And finally, of course, online environments provide the perfect opportunity to be able to do this. So let's talk about what prevents content from being accessible. An organization known as WebAIM did an analysis of the top 1 million websites within 1 year and compiled the 4 most prevalent issues. And let's see what you think is the answer to this question. So if you could just go to the chat and type in the chat, what do you think is the top barrier to accessibility? So I'll give you a minute just to put that in the chat. What do you think the answer to that is? Okay, somebody put font size, great. Font size too small. Contrast, Shannon, great. Small text. Knowing where to find help. Oh, here's a good one. No alt image descriptions on images. UI design. Not sure what you mean by UI design. Is the universal design for learning? User interaction. Okay, user interface. Great. Language not at a lower level to understand the context steps. Yes. Okay, so everybody's got a lot of great ideas here. And these are all things that are important. I'm going to show you and reveal what the top 4 issues are on websites. So the top 4 issues, Shannon, you mentioned items lacking contrast. That's one of the #1 things. Missing alternative text tags for images. So somebody else mentioned that. That means when you hover over an image, a little sentence does not pop up. A sentence that usually explains what the image is. Empty or broken links, and finally, missing form labels. So let's do a little poll to see what you have come up most with in your years of looking at the internet and looking at web pages. What is the issue that you have come across the most? So we're going to launch a poll here. Kyla, if you wouldn't mind launching the poll, that would be great. Okay, so just go ahead and vote. What is the issue that you've come across? It was really interesting to watch it change and grow. I kind of assumed before I started, before I came here, that people would highlight the missing links. That's something that I notice and that I really detest. And it seems kind of like a tie. It seems like a tie between missing links and lacking contrast. So that is what people have come across. So thank you for your participation in that. So that just comes to prove that accessibility really is for everyone and improves all of our experiences when we are using web resources, because if we don't have those things, we cannot access the information that we want, or we can't access it in a really easy way. So next, let's talk a little bit about how these barriers relate to accessibility, in particular our EAL students, and what can be done about them. So what are some issues that our EAL students face and how can they be addressed by accessible content? We'll go through a couple of issues and some of them might surprise you. The first is navigating a new LMS. So we often think that all our students are digital natives. They're going to know everything about how to use the web. They're going to know everything about technology much better than us. But imagine trying to navigate a new LMS if you're new to this country, new to this school, new to this forum in your second language and trying to acquire content simultaneously. So something as simple as making links and buttons descriptive can be a really huge help to our students. Following audio and video. The number one complaint that I've heard from our EAL students here on campus is having difficulty following pre-recorded content, especially with what happened the last 2 years during COVID. A lot of instructors were putting their content online and using pre-recorded lectures and videos. However, a lot of those lectures and videos did not have subtitles or closed captions. And so that was something that was really frustrating for a lot of students, that they would have to watch some of these videos, these lectures, numerous times to be able to discern what that information is. Reading large blocks of text. Following that is reading complicated large chunks of text that is not broken up. And so imagine if you are having to read a lot of textbooks already outside of the classroom, and then also having to add on this online content at the same time. So we can really simplify our content through the use of bullet points, short paragraphs, and even ensuring that we use some simplified fonts, like using sans serif font. That's a benefit, you know, so doing those things to make that information easily accessible to students. Understanding culturally loaded content. Another big complaint was that they don't understand all of what's being mentioned, sometimes online, in the classroom also. So missing jokes, cultural connections, and makes them feel like outsiders. New terminology. So one of the great features of Brightspace is that glossary tool, and also that we've got so many learning blocks that have been already laid out for us. So using some of that to clarify content can really help our students. So just adding that simple glossary of terms, that's going to be really useful to them. And lastly, this doesn't seem like it would be an issue, but some of our students have low internet bandwidth. Things like transcripts, tagging photos can really help with that. I had one student from China who completed an entire course that I designed. It was online, and I was the instructor for that course. He could not watch a single video, see a single image, see a single icon due to the poor internet bandwidth in the village that he was living in at the time. He was only able to finish it by reading the transcripts that were attached to the videos. So for me, that really hammered home that this is essential. So we've seen some of those barriers, some of the struggles that our EAL students might come across. And I'm going to talk about some of my top 4 tips, and I've divided them into these tips. So number 1, presenting content in multiple ways, organizing, structuring, and clarifying content, ensuring consistent navigation and content, and using what we call plain language. So let's talk about that a little bit more. So number 1 is presenting content in multiple ways. All students, but particularly those learning in a second language, require multiple modes of delivery in order to comprehend content fully. So this means adding the closed captions to the videos, as I mentioned before, adding in the video transcripts. So we're offering them 2 modes of delivery. They can read something and they can watch and listen to something at the same time. Using infographics to grab people's attention in addition to charts and tables and video. Tagging those images. And the reason that we tag images is so that, well, I gave you the example of my student who couldn't see any of the images and had to rely on the alt text tags. But also we use those tags so that screen readers will be able to read the image. And by the way, a lot of our EAL students also use screen readers because it gives them an audio option that's readily available. And again, it addresses the low bandwidth option. Instead of an image, they're going to see a written description of the photo. And of course, adding an element of audio so that not everything is in text format. So for our learners, it's important not just to recognize a word in its written form, but also to know how a word sounds for pronunciation purposes and for auditory recognition. Because sometimes they're going to know how it looks written down, but they won't be able to say it to anybody or recognize how it sounds. The next point is about organizing, structuring, and clarifying content. When we organize the structure of a page, D2L has made it pretty easy because using the editor, we can very simply organize our pages with headings, bullets, etc. So using the LMS's tools like the course templates, the headings, and the bullets, and sticking to those pieces instead of creating our own headings in another color and another font is actually a very important point, which I did not recognize before I became an instructional designer. And the reason why is that screen readers have been designed to read them in a particular way. And that is why it's important to stick to the heading and the bullet options. So for example, people who use screen readers can get the screen reader to read only the headings as a way to get an outline of the page. So, you know, for us, we're able to look at a page and pick out those headings right away. But if you're relying on a screen reader, you can ask them just to focus on the headings. But if you've created your own heading using your own fonts, your own font size, a different color, that option's not going to be available for those students. Also, we have been provided with a course production conversion guide, and I just kind of want to, I'm going to see if I can widen this right now. I just want to see how many people here know about the course production conversion guide. Can you just give me a reaction by raising your hand or using the reaction function? No? Okay, some people do, great. Okay, so there's a couple of people, and I'm going to show you that a little bit later, what I mean by that course production conversion guide. But that course production conversion guide gives us the ability to add in these little pieces like these learning blocks. And those learning blocks are really great for being able to organize content in a very, very easy way. And another great point about using those learning blocks is that they have been designed to be readily available and easy to read by screen readers. And so I use them quite often. For example, I use this reflection bubble a lot in instructional design, especially for asynchronous materials. Having reflection points is quite important for students. So I use this as a way for students to reflect. And this signals time for everybody to reflect on what they've just learned. The other good thing, I just want to mention one more thing about some of these learning blocks. They're designed to be responsive, meaning that if I move from a phone to a tablet to a computer, they're going to automatically change size and shape. And that's not something that you can design very easily unless you are an expert in HTML. So it's great that they have that there for us. We want to also ensure consistent navigation and content. So keeping consistent navigation and content structure is key, especially if we're getting students to access materials asynchronously, because there's no guide, there's no instructor there to say, first read this, then read this, now go to this page. Instead, there's nothing. So they've got to be able to manage and map out that content on their own. So if it's consistent, you've got a consistent shell structure, you're using titles in very effective ways, And you're using, well, I prefer to use, I use a lot of icons. And I use icons because it really helps to speak to those students who are having a lot of burden with reading. So makes it a little easier. But again, D2L has laid that all out for us. So I just follow their lead with the icons that they've already created. And the last part is to use plain language. So avoiding long blocks of text is really key. That's very difficult to read. Avoiding culturally loaded content. So especially when it's in asynchronous materials, because again, the instructor's not there to translate for students if they don't understand something. So a lot of we might find it very funny, this Bernie Sanders meme, but are students from another country necessarily all going to understand why that's funny? Probably not. Avoiding the use of idioms. So instead of putting something like, let me put it this way, you would use it in plain language. You say it in plain language. Let me say it in another way. So clear language with bullet points is really best, and with pictures that are properly tagged so everybody can understand and be on the same page. So now I'm going to take this opportunity to take you on a brief tour of the English Language Success Hub. And I'll give you some examples of how I've tried to create some accessible content for our EAL learners. So we can see here the, whoops, sorry about that. We can see here the, can everybody see that? English Language Success Hub. Okay, great. So these are some of the asynchronous materials that we've created for students, and they can be found on every student's dashboard at BCIT. And because of the range of learners out there, we wanted to make it completely accessible to anybody who needs it. And the course begins by welcoming students, and it directs them towards an introductory module where it goes through how the course works. And I'll just show you an example of that introductory module, because that introductory module is really where you're setting up information for them. And so in this introductory module, I've got this page about how the course works. And on this page, we can see information about the course, how to navigate through the course, some of the tools that are used in the course. And I've used just a couple of tools, the awards tool, the glossary tool, like I said, very useful for our EAL learners, the links tool, and the FAQs tool. And I also take some time to explain the iconography. I mean, of course, these are universal icons, but students might still struggle and not understand that this is a hand on a mouse and they're going to be doing an activity. So those are some of the pieces that I first laid out here. And I'll just go on to show you the map that's laid out for the course. So hinting at that consistent shell structure, you've got a course map. So it's really laid out and students understand that here's the module, here are the submodules, and these are the learning objectives that you're going to gain from each of these submodules. So that's another important point as well. I'm just going to go to this page here, and there's not that much interaction in this course. And the reason why there's not too much interaction is because we have a lot of students involved. There's a lot of people to monitor. And so we have put in one piece where people can interact, and it's on this online bulletin board. And, one of the most important aspects of instructional design for asynchronous learning is that students need to feel that the other people participating in the course with them are actual real people. So this is where they get an opportunity to do this. So this bulletin board helps them by just being able to make them understand that there are a lot of other people participating in this course. It also kind of helps with that stigma of being an EAL student as well. So helps them feel like they are not the only ones who are going through this course. So they're answering the question on here. What are they studying? What are their hobbies? And what their advice is for other learners of English as another language. What's your advice for improving your language skills? And so it also acts as a little repository because people get to put in their advice there, and you can read and see what people have put in. So right now I'm going to take you through a sample module so that you get an idea of how the course has been structured a little bit more. And so every module begins in the same way, and that has to do with that kind of consistent navigation and shell structure. So it begins with a module opener, including a tagged photo. This photo is tagged by students communicate during teamwork, the learning objectives of the module, and also a short activity. And then after that, the submodules then follow. And a couple of points to bring out here. I've got not only are these closed caption, but I've also got the video transcript. I'll talk a little bit about that, a little more about that later. So some of the submodules that follow, we've got speed and pitch and volume, body language, pausing and thought groups. This is a pronunciation module, and stress and intonation. So I'm going to show you one module here. We'll look at the body language module. So let's look at one of the submodules that fall under the main module of pronunciation. One thing that's important that I've really focused on is trying to keep consistent titles. So every page in a submodule is going to have a what do you notice page, what do you notice title. The next page is going to be a let's explore title. So that kind of consistent titling has been helpful as well for students to get some help with navigating. So every submodule begins with a brief activity of what do you notice, and there's a noticing activity here. So you'll notice that there's this little activity learning block denoted by this icon here to help students understand that they're going to be doing an activity in this module. And in this one, they're going to be listening and watching a presentation before answering questions. And you'll notice that all my videos use YouTube, and that's because YouTube is really great for closed captions, very easy to edit. And also at the bottom, they've got a transcript. And somebody who, an instructional designer who had a look at my shell, recommended using this accordion piece. And this piece we took also from the conversion guide, which I'll show you later. And if you click on it, then it's got the transcript of what's happening in the video. So students can watch and scroll at the same time. And some students like doing that. Previous to this, I had the transcripts in a link, but the link involves downloading. And there is something called click fatigue. So instead of having that, it's a little easier, just one click, not having to go download, read, drag it somewhere, etc. And then they're going to do their activity. And you'll notice under here that I've got a word bank box. And the word bank box collects all the meta language that they're going to need for this particular submodule. On the next page, we've got a Let's Explore page. And this is where the main content comes in. We've got the title. We've got a little information about it, noticing short paragraphs there. And we've got a little graphic here, and this graphic has been tagged. Eye contact, facial expressions, and posture and gesture are displayed in a triangle chart. And then they're directed to watch a short video again with the closed captions placed on hosted on YouTube, and the video transcript below. And then some of, oh, I'm sorry, yes?
Sorry, there's a couple of questions. So are these transcripts accessible? Can screen readers read them?
So all of these Learning Hub style pieces that I've gotten from the conversion guide, I've been assured are available to screen readers.
So the accordions are
yes.
able to, okay.
Yes, as well. That's right. Sorry, Wendy, was there another question as well?
Nope, that was it. It kind of covered both.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then after that, we've got some more information in another word bank that was covered in the video, and then some reflection questions follow as well. And on the next page, just showing an example of how we presented content in multiple modalities. So here we've got an infographic which summarizes the information that's in the video. So if they didn't respond to what's happening in the video, to the transcripts as well, then here's another way to present that information for students. And this they can download very quickly and easily as well.
Sorry, one more question.
Yep.
How do you do the video transcribing?
That's a very good a really great question. YouTube will transcribe your video for you. However, it is going to be completely unpunctuated. And also there's going to be a lot of errors. So meaning that you're going to have to go back and do that yourself. So that is one option, is letting something like YouTube transcribe your video for you and then going back and editing it. The videos that I create, I usually write a script, and then it's very easy for me to upload that script to YouTube. I will put in a plug here for the fact that ETS is considering using Kaltura. Kaltura is a really great software, a hosting platform for videos, and has some of the best transcribing for videos that I've ever worked with, and really great closed captions. So if you're interested in that, then please write an email to Brian Fair, because I think that would be a really fantastic tool to use as an alternative to YouTube. And just a little bit more, this is one of the activities that they're going to do after. And so they're going to watch a little video, and then after they watch this video, they're going to evaluate the speaker's eye contact, gestures, and posture, etc. And so I think that basically represents the structure of what happens in each of the modules and submodules. That structure is repeated, but with different activities and content throughout all the submodules of the shell. So I just wanted to show you a couple of examples of how kind of accessible content might look for students, and especially our EAL students. And before we go on to questions, I will show you also, of course, the course production conversion guide. So let me just navigate to that, sorry. Can everybody see this? Course production conversion guide. So these are some of the learning block tools that are in this conversion guide, and they're giving you, for example, these learning blocks. You can use team activity, key points, learning outcomes, etc. It also involves a lot. It also includes activities, etc. And I'm going to put this link in the chat, because this is something that's very easy to use and that I think everybody should know about. And if there's enough interest during the questions, I can show you really quickly how to enable that and how to put that in. And they've really laid out those graphic pieces and given us the ability to slip them into the course very easily. So something that I think is very useful for our EAL students. And before we go to questions, one last thing is that I have also created a little infographic for us as well. And I'm going to be sure to get that sent out in an email. So kind of just the information that I went over about what are the common barriers to accessibility, what our EAL students struggle with, and some of the top tips as well. So I'll make sure to send that out, and I can also place it in the chat too. And I think now we're ready for some questions. But I also have one last poll that I'm going to ask you, and the poll is, which accessibility consideration do you think that you are doing well in your own online course? So, Wendy, oh, thank you. You're on the ball, Wendy. That's awesome. Thank you so much. So just take a vote there. What do you think that you're currently doing really well in your online course? Which consideration would you say is going well for you? Please go ahead and vote. Great. Yeah, this is excellent. So a lot of people really focusing on that plain language. I'm super happy to see that, and organizing content through bullets and headings. That's excellent, and consistent structure as well. So great job, everybody. Thank you. So now I've got some time for, we've got some time for questions. So if anybody's got some questions, then please let me know. I'll share the results of that poll as well. I think that we can, not too many people. So I think if you want to just raise your hand and I can take your questions. Okay, we've got one in the chat actually. Are these learning blocks drag and drop widgets on the Learning Hub, or do you import them? So I can show people, I'll just do a really quick demonstration after a couple of questions to show you how that's imported. Usually I'll just use the HTML code, and there's a and we could just use it in the import function when the insert stuff button. It's very easy to put in, so that's no problem at all. Can we as non-students access the Student Learning Hub? Rick, are you referring to the English Language Success Hub? Is that what you're referring to? Okay, I'm not sure, but if you're referring to the English Language Success Hub, then
referring to, I would just like to look kind of interesting. I wanted to explore that a little bit.
oh, great. Yes. Yes, all instructors have also been enrolled in the English Language Success Hub. If you go to all, you're going to find it. You should be able to find it under there in the Learning Hub for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hugh, how are you using games to increase accessibility? I've got some activities. I wouldn't call them games, but I've got some activities in there. I've got some crossword puzzles, etc., just to add some diversity. I use those Learning Hub style pieces. They've got matching things. They've got some fun little activities to do. And so not so many games though, I would say. Anybody else with questions? Oh, Piper. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm just wondering, in the discussion forum, I'm pretty sure you can upload videos, like for students to upload videos through the ePortfolio. Does that apply as well to the discussion forum when they're introducing and engaging each other? Can they upload videos in that section?
In that part, I believe they can upload GIFs and images, but I don't believe that little bulletin board will support videos. Yeah.
So
Okay.
Christina,
So
that one is no.
Christina, can I say they can, so I'm an instructional designer in the Learning and Teaching Center. So students can, if they have an embed code, they can embed it into the discussion. So if they put their videos on their own YouTube channel, they can very easily just embed the video in the discussion.
Thanks, Rosario.
Thank you.
Amy, I think you had a question too.
Thanks, Christina. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Okay, great. I'm just designing a course right now. It was previously on a PowerPoint, and I'm with the Student Association, and we use Litmos and Articulate. And the Learning and Teaching Center has been so helpful for us when we have a course to like review our content and the instructional design. But would you ever suggest that we use the language support team as a resource to check content or make sure that our content is adhering to some of these guidelines?
It's not something that we've done in the past, but I'd be really happy to meet with you and chat with you about some of those, just some of the considerations that are important when considering EAL students.
I've already learned a lot from the presentation, so I don't want to bother you too much.
No, that's awesome. Great. Thank you, Amy. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer anybody else's questions. I'll also leave my email address in the chat for that. Any other questions right now? Okay, if we don't have too many questions, actually, maybe I will just really quickly just show me with a reaction. If you'd like me to show you how to input some of those pieces into the Learning Hub page. So just give me okay, we've got a couple of thumbs up here. So let me see if I can very quickly show people how to do that. So I'm just going to share again the English Language Success Hub. Okay, so for example, I want to put in this learning block with the links here. And there's a couple of ways to do it, but I'll show you the way that I found quite easy. And the reason I find this easy is because I create my content directly onto the Learning Hub page that I'm working on. And so we're going to click on this piece that says HTML, and then you get a bunch of scary looking code. So don't be intimidated by the code. And you're going to copy that, and it's simply a matter of copy and pasting. And then I'm going to, whoops, I believe I unshared myself. And then you're simply going to navigate over to a page where you want to insert something. So maybe here, sorry, I'm going to also have to go over to become an instructor again. So maybe here I'm going to add a page to common grammar errors at the bottom here. And let's say that I want to create a new page here. So same thing, you're going to create a file. Okay, and the important part here is that you select the correct document template, which means that it's going to be accessible to use those Learning Hub style pieces that we want. And I choose the BCIT default template, okay? And already it's given me the page title here that I want, where I want to put in the page title. I'm not going to mess with the kind of heading that I put. I'll just call this test right now. And here is the content that I want to input. And all you're going to do is you're going to navigate to the Insert Stuff button, one of my favorite buttons. And you're going to go down to the very last option here and enter embed code. I'm going to paste. I'm going to click next. I'm going to click insert, and it's there. And so this is also stuff that we can also play with and change. I usually call this box links. And there we go. We can do link number 1 here. And basically that's it. So very, very easy to import those pieces, as long as you remember that very first step of making sure that you enable that course template, the BCIT template first. Any questions about that? No, everybody seems okay. Okay, great. I'll stop sharing now. Yeah, just let me know if there are any other questions. Meanwhile, I'm also going to put in the chat that PDF, that infographic that I've created as well. So I will put that into this chat too. And I believe Shannon said that we can also email it out to everybody as well. Okay, I've put that in there as well. Any other last questions?
Hi, Christina. It's Amy
Oh, yes,
again.
Amy. Hi,
I
Amy.
just have one more question. So I know previously the language success team, a lot of the services that were offered were kind of like on a referral basis. It seems like, and I've seen a lot of posters around campus, so it seems now like students can access the supports and services with the language success team, like by self-referral and just by kind of finding their way to your website and seeing what they might need. Are there any other parameters with like referring students who might need these services that you would say?
We wanted to make it kind of as broad as possible. I think previous to this, I think you were referring to the language support classes. And for those language support classes, then that is something that we actually recommend students to. But for these other services, the asynchronous shell that I've created and something called English Lounge, which is a conversation group that I run, those are both things that students can choose to join, or maybe instructors might recommend that they join as well, but all students have access to those services. And we really wanted to make it so that they get a chance to choose if they need it or if they don't. And yeah, so far we've had a lot of students participating in those activities, so that's really great. Any other questions? Oh, I got a question about where I can find the recording for this meeting. I believe, Shannon, we're going to send out the link to that. Is that right, Shannon? So we'll send that link out. It's also going to be on our website as well. So yeah, we'll send you a link to that too.
Yeah, that's right. We'll leave a link on the event page, because that some people might go back to the event page on the Diversity Circles site where you signed up, and it will also be on your website, the Language Success Team's website. Thanks, Nathan, for putting that in the chat.
Oh, thank you, Nathan. That's great.
Well, thank you so much, Christina. It was a great presentation, and I always learn something new about what the Language Success Team is up to. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. I know some people had to leave early, it being a Friday afternoon, but lots of nice comments in the chat. It's just really great to see how many people are interested in accessibility. And of course, there are many passionate supporters of accessibility at BCIT. The Learning and Teaching Center, of course, doing amazing work in that area, and with Universal Design, accessibility services, Piper's here, her work with the Academic Communication Equity Office, the RDI office, of course. So really great to have all the work. And I want to acknowledge that at Diversity Circles, we've tried to look at many dimensions of accessibility, including neurodiversity. Jamie Finley, who's here, did an amazing presentation focusing on autism and how we make things accessible for the deaf and hard of hearing. And yeah, just a really exciting to see how many people support accessibility. But as you said, a lot of people do not necessarily think of EAL students, and specifically as another dimension of accessibility. So it was really great hearing about that today. And I learned some great tips for my Learning Hub courses, which now I can see where I need to make some improvements. So thank you again, Christina. It was fantastic having you today. And thanks everyone for joining us, and the whole Diversity Circle Steering Committee for supporting us. Have a great Friday afternoon.
Thank you, Shannon. And thank you everybody for giving up your Friday afternoon to be here. Thank you.